My boyfriend tried to make me swallow a parasite pill to prove my love. The afternoon started like any other, a lazy Sunday, the kind where the world outside felt muted and distant. I was curled up on the sofa, scrolling through mindless TikToks, when he walked in, Ethan, my then boyfriend. He wasn't just walking, he was striding, a peculiar intensity in his eyes, a small, opaque plastic bag clutched in his hand. My first thought was, oh, did he pick up dinner? But the bag was too small, too rigid. He didn't say a word, he just stopped in front of me, his shadow eclipsing the last sliver of fading light, and extended his hand. In his palm rested a single, enormous pill. It was unlike anything I'd ever seen. A monstrous, off-white capsule, easily the size of my thumb. My breath hitched. Here, he said, his voice oddly flat, devoid of its usual warmth. He extended his hand, the colossal pill resting on his palm like a bizarre, unwelcome offering. Take this. My brow furrowed. What is it? I asked, my voice laced with immediate suspicion. My gut, that ever-reliable alarm system, was already screaming. This wasn't a vitamin, wasn't a headache tablet. This was something else, something sinister. He didn't answer. Instead, his fingers, usually so gentle when they brushed my hair, now clamped around my jaw, surprisingly strong, forcing my mouth open. Just take it, Ava. Don't ask questions. A cold knot tightened in my stomach. Ethan, seriously, what is it? I'm not taking anything I don't know about. I tried to push his hand away, but he was surprisingly insistent, almost forceful. He moved closer still, his body language shifting from casual request to something more aggressive. Before I could react, he lunged, not violently, but with a shocking swiftness, and tried to shove the pill into my mouth. My eyes widened in horror. I recoiled, gagging instinctively. The sheer size of the pill, combined with the sudden invasive gesture, made my stomach churn. I coughed, spluttering, a wave of nausea washing over me. Ethan, what the hell are you doing? I shrieked, my voice cracking with a mixture of fear and disgust. Get that away from me! I'm not taking some unknown pill! He pulled back, his face contorted into a mask of frustration. The manic glint in his eyes intensified, morphing into a furious glare. Why are you being so difficult, Ava? He yelled, his voice rising, sharp and accusatory. It's a weight loss pill. I went through so much trouble to get it. Just take it and you'll never have to worry about being fat again. My blood ran cold. Weight loss? This wasn't just a random pill. This was tied to his relentless obsession with my body. Are you insane? I retorted, my voice trembling with indignation. Weight loss pills can cause kidney failure. I'm not taking that. Are you trying to poison me? His face flushed a deep, angry red. What do you know, Ava? It's all natural. It's harmless. It's a tapeworm eggs. The world tilted. The words hung in the air, heavy, putrid, and utterly horrifying. Tapeworm egg, a parasite, a living, growing thing that would feed off me, inside me, for his twisted idea of perfection. My stomach lurched violently, this time not from the physical presence of the pill, but from the sheer mind-numbing terror of his confession. The image of a grotesque, segmented creature coiling within my intestines, growing larger and larger, draining me, consuming me, it flashed through my mind with sickening clarity. A scream tore from my throat, raw and involuntary. Without another thought, driven by a primal, overwhelming terror, I scrambled off the sofa. My legs felt like jelly, but adrenaline propelled me forward. I snatched the monstrous pill from his still outstretched hand, my fingers recoiling from its smooth, cold surface, as if it were a venomous snake. I bolted for the bathroom, the image of the parasitic worm burning behind my eyelids. With a desperate heave, I flung the pill into the toilet bowl, slammed the lid shut, and flushed, again and again, as if the sheer force of the water could erase the horrifying reality of what he had just tried to do. Still shaking, my mind reeling from the sheer audacity and cruelty of what had just transpired, I stumbled back into the living room. Ethan was standing there, frozen, his face a mixture of shock and disbelief that I had dared to defy him. I ignored him. My eyes scanned the room wildly, searching for anything, to cleanse myself of the imagined contamination. My gaze landed on the half-empty bottle of vodka on the bar cart. Without a second thought, I grabbed it, unscrewed the cap, and brought the cold glass to my lips. I didn't care about the burn, the taste, or the alcohol content. I just needed to feel clean, disinfected, inside and out. I gulped down nearly half the bottle, the harsh liquid searing a path down my throat, a desperate attempt to purge the very idea of that monstrous parasite from my system. Then, fueled by a primal fear, I grabbed my keys and phone, threw open the door, and ran out of the house. I didn't stop until I reached the nearest emergency room. The nurses and doctors looked at me with a mixture of concern and confusion as I, a disheveled, tear-streaked woman reeking faintly of vodka, frantically tried to explain that my boyfriend had tried to make me swallow a tapeworm egg. They ran tests, blood work, and an ultrasound. The results came back clear. There was no parasite. No problem. Just a profound sense of violation and a chilling realization about the man I thought I knew. Looking back, the signs were there, subtle at first, insidious in their creeping progression, like a slow-acting poison. I was Ava, 5 feet 9 inches, 175 centimeters, with a naturally athletic build. My 136 pounds, 62 kilogram, was distributed across a frame that was toned and strong, thanks to years of hiking, cycling, and occasional gym sessions. My D-cup chest was proportionate, and I carried myself with confidence. The only part of my body that ever gave me pause were my calves. Muscular, yes, but a testament to my active lifestyle. They were a little too robust for some of the trendy, skinny fit pants I'd occasionally try to squeeze into from online stores like Amazon, but it was a minor inconvenience, not a source of insecurity. Then Ethan entered my life. At first, he was charming, attentive, seemingly enamored. He praised my strength, my adventurous spirit, but the compliments slowly began to shift, subtly at first, then more overtly. It started with seemingly innocent comments. "You'd look even more amazing if you leaned out a bit." Or, "Have you thought about doing more cardio? It really slims down the legs." These were delivered with a casual smile, almost as if he were trying to be helpful, supportive. I brushed them off, attributing them to his own fitness-focused mindset. He was always at the gym, always tracking his macros. I thought he was just projecting his healthy habits onto me. But the comments escalated. Soon, they weren't suggestions. They were demands. He became obsessed with the Instagram model aesthetic, the kind of body that seemed to defy gravity, all curves in the right places, with impossibly slender limbs. He wanted me to have that front protruding, back curving silhouette, and most disturbingly, matchstick-thin legs. My strong, capable calves became his personal crusade. "You're big, Ava," he'd say, his voice laced with disappointment, as if I had personally offended him by existing in my own body. "You need to lose weight. Seriously, you're getting heavy." This was despite my weight remaining consistently within a healthy range for my height and build. Every meal became a battleground. If I reached for a second helping, or even just a normal portion of something he deemed unhealthy, a heavy sigh would escape his lips, a long, drawn-out exhalation that spoke volumes of his disapproval, making me feel like a glutton, a failure. The worst part was the insidious way his control seeped into my daily habits. I started to internalize his criticisms. Eating in front of him became an ordeal. I'd pick at my food, eat tiny portions, or pretend I wasn't hungry, just to avoid his judgmental gaze, his sighs, his thinly veiled comments. The joy of food, something I had always cherished, withered under his constant scrutiny. And then came the purging. Not directly, not at first, it started subtly. "Are you sure you need all that, Ava? You know, sometimes if I overeat, I just get rid of it. You feel so much better afterward." He'd say it casually, almost conspiratorially, as if sharing a secret health hack. The first time he explicitly suggested it, after I'd eaten a particularly satisfying pasta dish, I was horrified. "Go on," he'd urged, his eyes fixed on me with an unnerving intensity. "Just go to the bathroom, you'll feel lighter." The shame, the disgust, the sheer violation of the request. I remember the bile rising in my throat, not from the food, but from the realization of how far he was willing to push. I never actually did it, but the suggestion alone was enough to make me feel utterly repulsed, and it added another layer of fear to every meal. I was constantly walking on eggshells, terrified of disappointing him, terrified of his judgment. His obsession with my body became my obsession, a constant nagging voice in my head, eroding my self-worth one meal, one comment, one sigh at a time. It was a slow, agonizing process of psychological erosion, preparing me in a twisted way for the ultimate test of his control. The moments after I flushed that monstrous pill, after I chugged the vodka and ran all the way to the hospital, are a blur of raw, visceral fear. But as the initial panic subsided, replaced by a cold, hard clarity, something snapped inside me. I was done. Utterly, irrevocably done. When I returned from the hospital, shaken but physically unharmed, Ethan was waiting. He looked different. The anger had drained from his face, replaced by a sickly pale hue and a desperate, almost pleading expression. He tried to approach me, his hands outstretched, but I recoiled, my body instinctively flinching away from his touch. Ava, please, he began, his voice raspy, a stark contrast to the furious shouts of moments before. Let me explain. You don't understand. My eyes, still stinging from unshed tears, narrowed. Explain what, Ethan? Explain why you tried to force a parasite down my throat? Explain why you lied about it being a weight loss pill, then admitted it was tapeworm eggs? My voice rose with each word, the horror of the situation still fresh and burning. He winced, running a hand through his hair. No, Ava, it wasn't real tapeworm eggs, he stammered, his gaze flickering nervously around the room, avoiding eye contact. It was just a test. A test. The word hung in the air, a cruel, mocking echo of his twisted logic. I stared at him, my mouth agape, unable to process the sheer audacity, the sickening depravity of his explanation. A test? I repeated, my voice barely a whisper, laced with disbelief. You tried to make me swallow a giant unknown pill, lied about it, then said it was a parasite, and you call that a test? He nodded, frantically, as if my understanding would somehow absolve him. Yes, a test of your commitment. I just wanted to see if you were truly dedicated to changing yourself for me. If you were willing to make that kind of sacrifice, that kind of commitment, then I was going to propose, Ava. I was going to buy you a ring right then and there. The words hit me like a fresh wave of nausea. A marriage proposal, contingent on me ingesting a potentially harmful, certainly terrifying, unknown substance. Contingent on me proving my love by compromising my health, my autonomy, my very sanity. Whether it was a real tapeworm or just a placebo, the intent was the same. Control, manipulation, a chilling disregard for my well-being. So, I said, my voice gaining strength, though it still trembled with a potent mix of anger and disgust. So, if I wanted to marry you, I would have had to swallow that parasite pill? That tapeworm egg pill? He looked down, shuffling his feet. Well, yes, but it wasn't real. It was just a metaphor for how much you'd be willing to sacrifice for our future. The sheer, unadulterated madness of it all washed over me. The tears that had been threatening to fall finally streamed down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage, of profound disappointment, of the crushing realization that the man I had loved was a monster disguised in human skin. Thank you, I said, my voice dripping with icy sarcasm, for the immense favor of not marrying me. The irony was so bitter it almost made me laugh. He had just revealed the depths of his obsession, the terrifying extent of his desire to control me, and in doing so, he had inadvertently saved me from a lifetime of psychological torture. The thought of being bound to someone who would concoct such a horrific test of love sent shivers down my spine. It was a blessing in disguise. A gruesome, horrifying blessing, but a blessing nonetheless. There was no going back from this. The image of that giant white pill, the sound of his voice saying tapeworm eggs, the chilling test explanation. It was all seared into my memory, a permanent scar that would forever remind me of the day I truly saw Ethan for who he was. The moment he uttered those chilling words, it was a test. Something inside me hardened. The tears stopped. The fear transformed into a cold, resolute anger. There was no going back. There was no discussion to be had. The relationship, already riddled with his toxic demands and criticisms, had just been irrevocably poisoned by his ultimate act of manipulation. Get out, I said, my voice flat, devoid of emotion. He tried to protest, to plead, to explain his twisted logic further, but I cut him off. I said, get out, now. This is over. He finally left, muttering something about me being ungrateful and overreacting. His words, once capable of sending me into a spiral of self-doubt, now bounced off me, hollow and meaningless. The relief that washed over me as the door clicked shut was immense, a suffocating weight lifted from my chest. Edit, after my story went viral on Reddit, within hours, my notifications exploded. Hundreds, then thousands of upvotes. Comments flooded in, a torrent of outrage, disbelief, and solidarity. People were horrified, disgusted, and overwhelmingly supportive. But then, amidst the deluge of comments, one particular reply caught my eye. It started with, OMG, is this about Ethan M? Because he tried something similar with me. My blood ran cold. It was another one of his ex-girlfriends. She detailed how he had tried to manipulate her into extreme diets, how he had once presented her with a special detox tea that made her violently ill, claiming it was, quote, testing her commitment to health. The patterns were undeniable. Her comment, and the subsequent conversation we had privately, confirmed what I already knew. This wasn't an isolated incident. This was his modus operandi. The Reddit post, fueled by the corroborating evidence from his ex, became a full-blown internet sensation. News outlets picked it up, albeit with anonymized details. It was everywhere. And then Ethan found it. His reaction was exactly what I expected, and yet still somehow pathetic. He didn't apologize. He didn't express remorse. Instead, he went on a bizarre, self-pitying rant across his own social media platforms. He posted vague, passive-aggressive statuses, clearly aimed at me but without naming names. Guess caring about your girlfriend's health and wanting her to be her best self is a crime now, he whined in one post, accompanied by a selfie where he tried to look forlorn. Another read, some people just can't handle constructive criticism, too sensitive for their own good. And the most infuriating one, it's not my fault if I have high standards for the person I want to spend my life with. If you can't meet them, that's on you. He thought he was painting himself as the victim, the misunderstood martyr. The internet, however, had other plans. The Reddit thread had already exposed his true colors, and his social media rants only added fuel to the fire. Screenshots of his pathetic posts were swiftly shared back to the Reddit thread, where they were met with a fresh wave of mockery and condemnation. He was mercilessly dragged, roasted, and lambasted by thousands of strangers. His comment sections became a war zone of public shaming. His high standards were dissected and exposed as manipulative control. His caring was called out as abuse. He became a cautionary tale, a meme of toxic masculinity. It wasn't my direct revenge, but it was a delicious, karmic retribution. He had tried to break me, to control me, to make me swallow his poison. Instead, he had swallowed a bitter pill of public humiliation, a taste of his own obsession reflected back at him 1,000-fold. The public shaming of Ethan, while satisfying in a primal way, was never my true goal. My objective, once the initial shock and anger subsided, was to heal, to reclaim the parts of myself he had tried to diminish, to erase the insidious whispers of his criticism from my mind. I didn't want to be defined by his toxicity or by the trauma he inflicted. I wanted to be defined by my own strength, my own joy, my own self-acceptance. The first step was to confront the very thing he had obsessively targeted, my body. For so long I had hidden my calves, feeling self-conscious about their muscularity. I had avoided skirts and dresses that hid above the knee, opting instead for longer styles or pants that concealed them. His voice echoing in my head constantly reminded me that they weren't thin enough, not dainty enough. But now that voice was losing its power. I started small. I bought a new pair of shorts, something I hadn't worn in years. Then a miniskirt. I looked in the mirror not with Ethan's judgmental eyes, but with my own. And what I saw was strength, power, the very definition of an active, healthy woman. My calves were a testament to my love for hiking, for cycling, for moving my body. They weren't a flaw. They were a feature. I started wearing those clothes, proudly, defiantly. Each time I stepped out, feeling the sun on my bare legs, it was a small victory, a silent middle finger to his toxic ideals. Then came food. Oh, glorious food! For months, years even, I had treated meals like a minefield. Every bite was weighed, every portion scrutinized, every craving suppressed. The joy of cooking, of sharing a meal with friends, had been replaced by anxiety and guilt. Now that was over. I went to my favorite Italian restaurant and ordered the biggest, cheesiest pasta dish on the menu. I savored every mouthful, not counting calories, not worrying about his hypothetical sigh, not feeling the urge to purge. I ate until I was satisfied, truly satisfied, and for the first time in a long time I felt no guilt, no shame, only pure, unadulterated pleasure. It was liberating. I rediscovered my love for baking, for trying new recipes, for enjoying food as nourishment and as a source of comfort and joy, not as a tool for control or a source of self-loathing. The most profound part of my healing journey, however, was opening myself up to new connections. For a while, I thought I might never trust anyone again, especially not with my heart. The thought of dating, of letting someone else into my life, filled me with dread. But time, and the unwavering support of my friends and family, slowly chipped away at that fear. And then, I met Leo. He was everything Ethan wasn't. Kind, gentle, and genuinely appreciative of me, exactly as I was. On our first date, I was still a little guarded, still half expecting some subtle critique, some veiled suggestion for improvement. But it never came. He listened intently when I spoke, his eyes full of genuine interest. He laughed at my jokes, not out of politeness, but because he found them genuinely funny. One evening, early in our relationship, we were walking along the beach, and I was wearing a dress that showed off my legs. I braced myself, almost unconsciously, for a comment about my calves. Instead, he simply took my hand, his thumb gently stroking the back of my knuckles. You have such strong legs, Ava, he said, his voice soft, admiring. You can tell you love to be active. It's really beautiful. My breath hitched. No judgment. No suggestion for change. Just pure, unadulterated admiration for my body, exactly as it was. It was a small comment, but it meant the world. It was a validation of everything I had been trying to reclaim. With Leo, there were no tests, no demands, no hidden agendas. There was just acceptance, respect, and a genuine, unconditional love that felt like coming home. He loved my strength, my curves, my quirks, and yes, even my muscular calves. He saw me, truly saw me, and loved what he saw. It was a stark contrast to the constant battle I had fought with Ethan, and it allowed me to finally shed the last vestiges of his toxic influence. I was free. The experience with Ethan was a brutal, horrifying lesson, but it was a lesson I desperately needed to learn. It stripped away any lingering illusions I had about what love truly means, and what it absolutely does not. True love is acceptance. It is seeing you, truly seeing you, with all your perceived flaws and imperfections, and loving you anyway. It is celebrating your strengths and supporting you in your growth, not dictating it. It is building you up, not tearing you down. It is cherishing your health, not jeopardizing it. It is a partnership built on trust, respect, and mutual admiration, not on twisted tests and conditional affection.